The following program is from NET, the National Educational Television Network.
The tides, the seasons, the erosions that time carves around all of us, these are still constants in our lives today, but all else seems to have changed. The impact upon us in some ways is unperceived, the change unnoticed. We only see the accumulation and the result, that our cities are changing and we have little voice in the matter, that our values more and more have come to be private, not public ones, that we have learned to master a good deal of nature and very little of society. Or in the middle of the 20th century, in the midst of the industrial, or in this instance, the urban revolution, it still is not clear whether we determine the change around us or it determines the lives we are forced to lead. In its America's Crises series, the National Educational Television Network presents the last of 4-hour-long studies of values in America. The community. In the quiet of early morning, Provincetown, Massachusetts looks as though it has never changed. It stands resolute and deeply rooted in American tradition. For its fishermen, the town is very much the way it has always been. And yet they know their town is undergoing deep and inescapable change, change that is disrupting their lives, change which they feel incapable of guiding.
My name is John Fields, is my right name, and I've been fishing about 40 years. No matter where you go, I suppose Provincetown just like every place else as far as that's concerned. I know that when we were kids, well, I had a pretty good life. I mean, I never had nothing to kick about. I had everything I wanted, but I'm glad I ain't trying to bring up anybody now with this kind of goings on around here now, with this kind of fishing. It's an old game. I think that it's a business that you can't change too much. There's no way of changing. And what's hurting us is the new methods of fishing. So they go out after the fish. We can't. We have to wait till they come. He said we have more competition. We even have boats coming over here from California now to catch tuna. I remember when I first started in. When I first went in from high school, I think we used to sell fish for more money than what we get for them now. One company been in business, I should think about 75, 80 years. Went out of business last year. And there's another company, the other fellow that's fishing there now, I don't know, he may go another year. We might last a couple of years, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Most of these boats either had the sons on it or the cousins or the uncles and more or less family stuff, don't you know? And on account of that is why they never did join a union or something, don't you know? Everybody seems to be for themselves and they don't care. If they're getting along, they're just well satisfied. Of course, there's a few young fellows around here with a little push in them, but if they had any help, they probably would do something. But the older fellows don't care now. They're set. They know that they can't get ahead anymore, and just well satisfied to leave it that way.
3,000 miles across country, from Cape Cod to California, the same early morning quiet prevails in a lush fruit orchard in San Jose, just 50 miles south of cosmopolitan San Francisco. Through the first half of this century, the land and farming were the mainstays of San Jose, just as the sea and fishing were for Provincetown. Then came the Depression, and later World War II, and the shuffling of men and their families across the country, particularly to California and points west. The war ended. The movement has not. In the last 15 years, the only significant migration of people in this country has been to the west. Portions of Florida and Louisiana have boomed. Southern Negroes have moved in large numbers to the north, but the great migration has been to the western and mountain states. Today, San Jose, California is the second fastest growing city in the nation. Its agriculture has been driven out to make room for industry, for real estate developers, and new people, and more new people. The old-timer in San Jose may still try to pretend that it is a small rural town, but the facts belie this. The community is building with 310,000 inhabitants, 100 times larger than Provincetown, and increasing by the minute. It is the new America, the promised land, the land of opportunity, the place for a new start. From fruit growing to electronics and missiles and transistors. But despite the tremendous differences between the new contemporary San Jose's and the old traditional Provincetowns of America, differences in size and location, tradition and appearance, the response of the people to change is generally the same. But not everyone uproots. There is a choice to follow the new industries, the new markets, the new America, or to remain close to familiar things and people, working at a familiar trade as long as it lasts. Provincetown is deeply rooted in the past. It was here in 1620 that the Pilgrims first set foot in the New World. In this harbor, the Mayflower Compact was drafted. Whaler and fishing craft, clipper ship and steamer called this home port through the centuries to the present. Provincetown citizens feel strongly their connections with this great past. But today, in mid-century America, there seems to be no real place for the old or the traditional. All is movement and change, even in Provincetown, though some feel the town's character will endure despite the change. One is Mary Heaton Vorse, author and playwright. Now 90, Mrs. Vorse helped found the Provincetown Playhouse, considered the beginnings of the American Little Theater.
I think that the town has changed. It's changed as other places have changed, just become more so. Provincetown has always been the bad boy of the Cape, supposedly. But now in recent years, we see that the same thing has happened all over the country. I've lived in this house 56 or 7 years. It belonged to a whaling captain named Kibby Cook. I have his rocking chair here, and I have his logs and his writing material. His ghost walks. He does. He paces the halls. He's a harmless ghost. We always call it Kibby Cook because it sounds like a captain slowly pacing his deck. Why do I like this scrubby, sandy country more than any other? Or perhaps it's the effect of light. There's a peculiar light around Provincetown. You see, the prevailing wind is east, southeast, and the wind comes from the open ocean. Then it crosses the peninsula, and it's extremely aromatic. People said that we had a mission when we started the Playhouse, but we didn't have any vision. We didn't think it up that way. We wanted to have fun to start with, and then Gene O'Neill, and then Judge Fran Cook, and Nathan Boyce had a vision of a town that took in everyone in the theater, and lots of town people acted and wrote and helped somehow in that theater. But it was in that spirit of an amateur spirit of fun and amusement, rather than feeling we had any big mission.
History, writers, and artists, and natural beauty are the intangible assets of Provincetown. The fishermen may be the first citizens, but the painters and writers are the second. Its art colony today is the undisputed summer art center of America. Paradoxically, the artists and the fishermen, living and working alongside of one another, have unconsciously created the new industry of Provincetown, tourism. Tourism few say they want, but all seem to feel is the answer to survival. One who disagrees is Philip Mallicote, nationally known artist, who has fought hard to preserve the old against the encroachments of tourism.
The artist is a working person, and I think he likes to be around other people who are working too. And as far as I've felt, there's always been a very good, genial feeling between the fisherman and the artist. Because, especially in the old days, the artist was always welcome to free fish down the wharf. You never had to ask for it. They gave it to you. There are few enough places, as far as I know, in this country that you can go to and get out of the way of the rush of civilization, so-called. I'm arguing from the point of view of, you might say, non-commercialism, because you can't go out and sell underwear and paint. It's just impossible to do it. Two different states of mind. In other words, I think that the large commercial enterprise should be kept out of town. That's been going on all over America today. That's called progress, but I don't believe it. If it is, it's in the wrong direction.
Talk about groups, I'm talking about an element that's been around here that look to me like riffraff, beatniks, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know what you want to call them. They're no asset to the community.
Children are growing up, I had to warn them about a certain element of people that come into town.
They come in here, they're free and easy, and then there's all these different little honky-tonks for a certain group of them, and then you get a lot of them that come in here just wants to rubberneck, see what's going on in the place.
Our crime problem, we probably have everything that the large city has, but we don't have the volume. We have because the biggest part of our crime is drunk, but we have our stolen cars, our breaking, entering, our robbery, and etc. But our crime rate in the last 2 years has decreased. We have a problem. Roughly, I would say, give or take, about 33 bars. Well, if you get 33 bars, we have within a small area, we have about 7 to 9 bars emptying into one particular square. Well, these bars will hold probably anywhere from 100 to 150 people. So when you get 1,000 people emptying into a square after they've been frolicking all night and biting in a few drinks, we've always got a potential problem. And in all the bars, we have entirely too many bars for the size of the town. Well, I imagine there's a lot of people. For $1, naturally they want it. It's their own personal gain, but it isn't the gain of the community. And I'm not interested in personal gain. I'm interested in what is good for our community, what is good for our future generation.
Well, there's nothing unusual. I'd say these so-called nightclubs, people come here. I think many people come here to watch them expecting something. I think they're disappointed. For some reason or other, it's publicized as a wild place, I guess. And I don't know. There's nothing. They have little places where they entertain, and eating houses and dance places, and many liquor licenses in the town. They're very free with liquor licenses. No more than any other place, but it's a concentrated situation again.
Robert Welsh, third-generation Provincetownian. Like his father, both a presiding judge and president of the oldest savings bank on Cape Cod. He is resigned to the change and is cheerfully making the best of it.
Well, as a banker, of course, we welcome in. All business here thrives on business, any kind of business, I guess. All types of business. Banking has changed the same way the town has changed. In other words, the people who own or have the money in the bank today are third generation hyphenated Americans, if you want to put it that way. We'll say, in this town, we'll say Portuguese people. They're the economic background of the town. They own the buildings and they own most of the real estate and they have most of the money in the bank. You do it to preserve yourself. A bank is a self-perpetuating institution, but it can't perpetuate itself if it doesn't have deposits. In Provincetown, if it turns out that 70% or 60% of the land, the people who own the land and the buildings are beatniks, and 60% of the deposits of the bank are beatniks, it'll be the president of the bank will be a beatnik. Why not?
Like the judge in Provincetown, the bankers and the businessmen in San Jose believe strongly in self-preservation. Just after the Second World War, the Chamber of Commerce went cross-country to woo industry. But even before the industry arrived, people began moving in. Population jumped from 40,000 to 100 to 300,000. Today, thoughtful people fear that it will become another Los Angeles, a sprawling stretch of mass-produced homes and shopping centers hastily assembled into a disorderly metropolis. Nevertheless, the city fathers keep reaching out and adding more territory within the city boundaries. But progress is not without its price.
Well, it lacks cohesiveness. In part, this is because it's one populated area in the midst of an almost continuous populated area that extends entirely around San Francisco Bay. You can't say, here's where San Jose begins and here's where San Jose ends. And I'm sure that this geographic factor reduces the sense of belonging to a particular community. Then to hear people have been very job-oriented in the sense that they think of themselves as belonging to a particular corporation that brought them here, some of the giant corporations that we have operating here. They're oriented to that as their community rather than to a town.
The speaker, San Jose State College sociologist Snell Putney, author of a book entitled Normal Neurosis, The Adjusted American. Professor Putney could be describing one of many Western boom towns.
The individual who lives in a small, rural, stable setting grows up in an environment where he pretty much knows what he is and where he is, and what he's going to do, and what his life is going to be like. He's not being pressured to rise above his parents. He probably doesn't have anywhere to go. In short, he knows what he is. And from this he derives a very great security, even though it also restrains him. Today, increasingly, the American seems to be very uncertain about what he is. He's groping, he's looking, he's wondering. And is struggling with the problem of identity. I think there's a great deal to this that ties into the whole problem of the community.
And yet, despite the sociologists, the quick jumping real estate prices, and the anonymity, Americans continue to push westward. In San Jose, 90 new residents a day, 33 new homes built every week, a new school every 6 weeks. What brings them? A new job, the weather, the possibilities for leisure, and almost always a better life for their children.
I'm very happy to welcome you to our community, Mrs. Browder. Have you ever had a welcome wagon call before?
No, I haven't.
Well, I have lots of information about San Jose and the area around us.
Some of the older residents of the new Americas see that the haphazard growth, the reckless pursuit of what is called progress, and the desire for the immediate economic gain may be carrying the seeds of self-destruction. One person is Henry Voss, second-generation San Jose rancher and president of the County Farm Bureau.
So here we see this land being supplanted with houses and industries, roads and schools, and these things are going to come. The climate is ideal for fruit growing. Any climate that's ideal for fruit growing, most people find ideal for people growing. And we're going to have these pressures, but I think that we could have done a better job, and we must in the future do a better job of planning this land and how we're going to use it. We've been losing about 5,000 acres of good prime agricultural land a year for the past 10 years now. We can't blame any individual for this. We would like to have our cake and eat it too. Farmers all talk about this terrible waste of land as individuals. They're all very anxious to get the highest price they can for the land and sell it because this makes you a wealthy man. You may have been a poor dirt farmer a few years ago, and today you're a wealthy man if you can sell the land properly. I think this is true with the developer. Most developers, when you talk to them, would like to build in a rural community, but it's they themselves who are destroying the rural living, because there again, they have to make a living. And people, just in general, want to live in an area where everything grows, and many people move into a subdivision because it's across the street from a beautiful orchard, and by the fact that they moved in, they have already signed the execution for the beautiful trees across the street, because now that farmer will soon be selling for development, and so on it goes.
It's suffered a great many disadvantages. It's grown much too rapidly, and I don't think government's kept up with it. There's a good deal I feel we should be dissenting from, the ugliness among other things, and the failure to plan ahead when the problems are apparent. I mean, you only need to look at Los Angeles and you can anticipate the problems that we in San Jose are going to face. San Jose is no different than most of our cities. They're influenced by this economic ethic of no plan, some belief that there's an automatic mechanism which makes economic decisions and causes the community to grow in somewhat of a satisfactory way. Well, I think it's proven this is absolute nonsense. Our communities aren't pretty, they're ugly, they're going to become increasingly ugly. They're really offensive. They're what I call aesthetic atrocities.
The voice of opposition, William Stanton, State Assemblyman from San Jose, attorney, economist, liberal Democrat, intellectual. His is an uphill fight.
How we're going to combat this, I don't know. Every once in a while someone makes an effort, but I think we might have a War Department to wage war on unesthetic aspects of the community. Maybe to go out and organize people to go picket even when something is ugly, or to go appear before the city council and raise the devil about it.
Well, I would basically disagree with that completely. I feel that planning in the city of San Jose, considering our tremendous growth and expansion, has been very adequate.
Opposed to the Stantons are the forces of rapid growth and profit, led by Dutch Hammond, city manager of San Jose for the last 14 years. His power is political and economic and dominant.
It's the same old enigma. How do you account for the fact that Los Angeles, as bad as everybody says it is still the fastest growing city of the United States? I see it ranks first in building permits practically every month. What does Los Angeles have that attracts these people? These are the things that I say we should start studying. It's easy to criticize Los Angeles as being the most awful place in the world to live, but in spite of it, most of the people want to live there.
As the song says, hi-ho, come to the fair, and come westward. The county fair in urban San Jose is actually a throwback to former times. This is what fairs traditionally were like in San Jose's earlier days, say 30 years ago. But it also reminds the new residents from Iowa and Oklahoma and Massachusetts of fairs back home. In some ways, it is just this touch of provincialism that the city's boosters delight in advertising. Why locate in San Jose? It has a small-town quality, for one. Then its low crime rate, for another. And the large percentage of people with high incomes and education. Its good schools and bountiful parks. San Jose State College is the 19th largest college in the nation. And, of course, the weather. Today, most residents of San Jose are newcomers to the city and strangers to one another. They have the advantages, presumably, of growing up and working in what might be an ideal community. But they take little responsibility for the shape of that community. And so their values are private rather than public ones, their commitment rarely extending beyond their immediate family. To the older people, the grandparents who left other homes and other towns for this new America, the past seems a hardier time, one that was characterized by simple virtues. They knew their neighbors, and they shared a common responsibility and common goals with them. The past, that earlier America, it was a time that perhaps was never quite as lovely or as real as it seems now, and certainly will never be the same again.
When I was a boy, there were a great many unpaved streets. There were a great many more trees. People were more neighborly, and the business district was a concentrated entity. There were no suburbs. It was called the Garden City. It was just a quiet, relatively sleepy little town. There were a few FFVs, but they were very tolerant people. They were not snobbish. I mean, they had wealth, but they didn't display it ostentatiously. And we had a large middle class that carefully groomed their lawns and trimmed their hedges and kept their flower beds up, and were very neat and very quiet.
Only one person out of every 100 in San Jose today was born there. Lawrence Appleton, Harvard graduate and professor of economics at San Jose State, is one of that small group.
And we've all read about these stories in various communities where violence is being committed upon someone's person and people just run away from it. They're afraid that they'll become involved in some way. And this has happened here, and I expect it will continue so to do. There's a tremendous mobility on the part of our population today, and a great many of them have become absolute drifters, and they don't sink any roots into a particular community, and they have no fondness for any community, because they're concerned with rushing to work in the morning and rushing home at night, and they live in their own little enclaves, and they have very little contact with community life. And I'd venture to say that it would be difficult to describe what community life is in this community. I mean, in the sense that when we used to have the old Vendome Hotel, and we used to go to dancing school, and used to enjoy people's company and good conversation, and this doesn't happen very often much more.
All right, let him go. Christ, let him go. Let him go. He's all right. He got a lot of line. Hell of a lot of line there. You don't need to worry about that. He'll stop when he's ready.
In San Jose, the people come in the hope of realizing their own particular form of the American dream. In Provincetown, those who elect to stay must find new ways to make a living. Presently, the most obvious ones are tourism and entertainment. Some feel it's only a quick money, a short-term affair. But the impact will change the town beyond repair, destroying the reason for tourists.
What sort of a tail action does he have?
One such citizen is Charlie Mayo. He grew up among Provincetown's fishermen and artists, and his roots in Provincetown go back to colonial days. Years ago, after Dartmouth College, he left for the big city and the world of literature and publishing. But his liking for the sea and the feeling for, what? Roots, tradition, commitment, brought him back to Provincetown. Now he charters his boat on a selective basis for sports fishing.
I got him. Wait a minute now. Hold on. Did I know you get this one? Did I? Come down here. Don't leave that. Yeah, quick, get it. Oh, that's good. that other one, yeah. Get him. Got him?
It's true that tourism presents a kind of new way of making money and making it faster for some people, and maybe making more than they can make out of fishing, and of course it's so much easier in terms of you don't have to go out here in the middle of wintertime in the snow and the rest of it the way these boys have to on these fishing boats to make $1 if you run a tourist affair. I think the merchants, resident merchants, and the fishermen, and the artists all have a basic common interest. And it's rather a pity that they haven't come to recognize it soon enough to prevent the transformation of the town that will drive the creative people away. And I'm fearful that there'll be a rather bad effect unless we do something about it very soon. Now, we've already put into effect zoning, which I'm sure the town as a whole recognizes as essential. I had hoped it would come sooner.
But the zoning did not come soon enough to prevent the construction of this motel. It represents the specific point of conflict in Provincetown today. Opponents view it as the beginning of another Miami Beach. But its owner, Robert Roman, a newcomer, sees it as the hope for the future.
They maintain that they want to keep Provincetown as it was 100 years ago or 150 years ago, or at the time Thoreau used to wander over the sand dunes in Provincetown. To me, it's a rather ridiculous viewpoint for the simple reason that, of course, at the time of Thoreau, we had probably a few thousand people on Cape Cod. Today, there are many, many times greater numbers than there were then. And consequently, our conditions and our situation and our economics are completely different from what they were at that time.
You expect to be called an antiquarian if you defend something which you realize was good and excellent. When you begin to talk about it being destroyed, if you say, don't fill in that field and build a motel because the field supplied us at one time with, it's a great thing. Don't knock down all the trees because the birds are in it and build motels. This is called being an antiquarian, but it isn't. I see people wandering downtown pier, youngsters, and old people too, older people, walking down with seagulls flying over them and water rippling underneath the pier, and they don't even hear this, but they have a transistor radio at their ears. Now, this is ridiculous. We mustn't allow ourselves to be overwhelmed by the schools of tourists that school around us now like fish. Didn't allow it.
Provincetown is so peculiarly situated that it'll be impossible for us to ever be able to get any form of industry here, any form of commercial enterprises outside of the tourist industry. Now, if we cannot provide accommodations for these people, and they demand the very latest of everything, if we cannot provide that, these are people that will not stay here. They'll go elsewhere where they can get accommodations of those type. And consequently, Provincetown has to do everything it possibly can to maintain these people, to keep them here in this area.
It has nothing to do with the business of taking more tourists on or providing them with simpler ways or easy ways of enjoying the luxury of sun beside a swimming pool. I think in reality, I believe we're better off without these things. So I feel that the kind of progress that is being talked about now is progress backwards. We have to come to realize is that progress is in human development, in the ability of man to create. Creativity, I think, is of the core of progress.
Progress is a funny word.
And the first time I came here, I fell in love with it.
The affectionate tone belongs to one of Provincetown's colony of summer residents, Abe Burrows, the famous playwright and celebrity. He has become a summer fixture, admiring of the town and admired in turn.
There are changes. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like. There are people in the town who would like to make it different from the town we first found when we came here. I found a marvelous community here of artists, writers, psychiatrists, I guess, who are there to help the artists and writers. And there's the underlying population, which is of Portuguese ancestry. People whose ancestors came over from the Azores years ago, fishermen, marvelous people. Well, that's the point. In other words, I think this town has kept its pattern longer than most towns, its original pattern, because of the different nature of these people. A lot of them are fishing people, people of nature, that work with natural things. And those people always have a tendency to join the mainstream drive at a different time, you know? But now, I guess, as they grow up and the new generations come in, the new generations will pick up more the American pattern of the success drive.
Most of the kids don't want to stay here, actually. There really isn't that much future. If you got an education in this town, well, most of the things that the only real job that an educated person does is like a teacher. Well, most of the other people don't have really educated jobs because a large percentage of them don't need it.
You see what's happening with my son. You see what's happening with all the sons around here now. They don't see no future in it. Actually, there's no future in it. So what they're doing, they're getting an education, and they're going out and better themselves. So you've got nobody. If I quit, you have nobody to replace me. Somebody else quits, you have nobody to replace them.
The story of the Codina family repeats itself throughout the country. Fewer and fewer Americans settle in the communities in which they were raised and educated.
I'm a native of Portugal, Nazaré of Portugal. I came from Portugal in 1926. Well, the first day I came from the old country, I went down, a couple took me down the beach, and I found an old battered rubber ball, and it was all broken up and everything, and I thought, to me, that was a pot of gold, just coming from the old country. I never wore shoes in the old country, and I was 7.5 years old. I had shoes, but would just wear it on Sundays. My father was a fisherman, my grandfather was a fisherman, my great-grandfather was a fisherman, and God only knows how far back. And so I am carrying on, and whether my son carries on, I don't think he will, but he's fishing with me this summer.
Well, I just don't want to be a fisherman. And I just not too enthused about, like, spending the rest of my life going out at 4 o'clock in the morning and coming back at 6 o'clock. You want stability for your life. You're planning a life. You want an occupation. It just wouldn't pay to go into fishing.
Well, personally, I would like to do something else myself. Let's face it. What am I going to do? There's nothing I can do but keep on going fishing.
I don't blame people who want to change the pattern of their lives. I think it's part of our American pattern. I know there's some controversy in the town. I'm a little saddened by it. See, I don't like to see the controversy. In other words, my feelings are not black and white. And the people who want to change the town, make it more go, go, go. But you can see my attitude. I don't agitate. I do a few of the things I think I can do as a citizen and a human being. We work on various things there, and I think some things are going to improve. But in the end, I'm afraid, not afraid. I know the success forces will win, you know?
The question is, what do they win? The Western states have won more people, more industry, and more wealth. They seem to be the vanguard of the new urban revolution. But with it have come new problems. Where Provincetown has jobless fishermen and few other occupations to turn to, San Jose, with its variety of industry, is nevertheless an area of high unemployment. Not only unskilled workers, but even engineers and automation specialists. 1 in every 5 households is affected by the fluctuating economic conditions of industries dependent on government contracts. American cities have grown up as industrial and marketing centers. In a one-industry town, when its particular product or raw material becomes obsolete, the town usually has lapsed into decay. Business today is vast and impersonal and fast-moving. So fast, in fact, that the San Jose's have barely been able to plan for the real and the anticipated growth. And sometimes the push for new industry only ends up by killing one enterprise to make way for another.
Here in Santa Clara County, we have the largest processing and canning industry in the world concentrated in one area.
Rancher Voss.
And as this agriculture disappears, so are these manufacturing and processing plants. And along with this goes the trucking industry. This is one of the crucial things that's happening in this county. While we're so anxious to get new industry in the county, which we need for the people coming, we are at the same time doing away with the industry that we already have because we're doing away with the raw product they need. Well, most of these people that work on our ranch live locally around the area. Many of them have come to California from Arizona, New Mexico, elsewhere over a period of years, and have settled here. The families themselves help do the harvesting. Prunes, as you know, has always been a family type of operation where mother or father and the children come out and work together.
¿Quién es usted, señora? ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Es usted la señora?
Rapid change brings new problems, and health clinics, such as this one, sponsored by local church groups, help those who are dislocated. In this instance, the migratory workers. In the cities, it is the unskilled and the uneducated, along with those who have been trained to perform tasks for obsolescing industries, who bear the greatest burden of change. It is they who view automation with the anxiety and anger of threatened men. Not surprisingly, often they belong to an ethnic minority in the community. In San Jose, 55% of the welfare roll consists of Mexican Americans, although they make up only 15% of the city's population. Elsewhere, it is usually the Negro, the Indian, the Puerto Rican, who is trapped into becoming part of those other Americans weighted down with poverty and welfare.
Okay, little guy. All right,
They become the wards of the community. For in today's America, ugliness can be sown in the streets and buildings that are thrown up overnight. But there is concern when it spreads to people. So clinics are set up, and the beginnings of some kind of remedial action. And the physical development of the community appears to be just as short-sighted, despite all the boosters' brochures and the planning commissions. Here is the start of the new American slum, the tract home. 5 years ago, 2,000 of these low-price homes were sold. All that was needed was $99 down. Today, many of them have been abandoned because the owners could not or did not choose to keep up the payments. As for plans for future development, they often are inadequate, and even if acceptable, often ignored. In one area, the council granted zoning changes for a major developer 6 months after the same council had approved a master plan for that area, a plan that presumably ruled out such changes.
You can't control this growth unless you have large-scale planning agencies which have authority. And one thing I'm sure I just intuit this, I've seen a little bit, government officials are under terrific pressure from people who can gain by not following a plan. For instance, zoning. Look at the problems anyone has under zoning. I know I've represented people, not because I have influence, but they're clients of ours, And I've tried to get zoning. Some of it I generally thought was good. Others might be questionable. But public officials are under terrific pressure where money's involved, where there's potential economic gain. And unless they have the institutions and the support from the people, it's hard to hold the dam. It's hard to hold back.
Like all institutions, these new cities have built their bureaucracies. Today, for a citizen to make his influence felt, he usually must be represented by a pressure group. In San Jose, homeowners have banded together, opposed by boards of merchants, realtors, and industrialists. It has been charged that about 25 of these businessmen and developers really run San Jose, and that their spokesman and strongest defender member is the city manager himself, Dutch Hammond.
Well, I answer it this way. I think that every community needs a progressive group to present to the people the good and progressive thinking. And this particular group that you speak about is a progressive group. And it isn't only interested in the city of San Jose. And whether it's that group or this particular group or some other group, every community needs good leadership. And you show me the community that is progressive, that doesn't have one of these, and I'll say that that community is not progressive. And you must remember that what this little segment of people does in this community is proportionately expanded throughout the community. This group doesn't run this town. This community is run by a great group of people.
That great group of people seldom appear before the city council. Few even take the time to vote. San Jose has over 100,000 registered voters. During municipal elections, fewer than 25% go to the polls. The mayor, Dr. Joseph Pace.
Actually, a councilman and a mayor have terrific and tremendous responsibility and authority. We can take people's property away from them. We can tell them how much it's worth. We have all kinds of power if it can be used, sometimes righteously and sometimes not righteously. When we approved our budget the other day, there were 16 people in the chambers, and there was not a word of comment. It took about 2 or 3 minutes to approve the budget of $42 million.
San Jose's city council is like many other local government bodies. It meets one night each week and acts swiftly on perhaps 100 items on the agenda, most of them dealing with zoning and real estate problems. These are difficult to follow, and the council session actually becomes a forum only for special interest groups and a base of operations for the power block. Councilman Solari.
After all, a development of a community as rapid as we have is a gigantic real estate development, because they're the one that's putting up the money and the capital. It has to be economic, has to be sound, and therefore they do have a direct interest. And although they may have some personal aspiration that they'll be getting contracts and making money, that's fine. We want them to see them make money. Business people bear a terrific proportion of our tax structure, some 30%. If business is successful, the welfare of the community is also good. If they fail, then we have a very bad situation. It's always been my philosophy that the good and welfare of the community is correlated in the same degree success of business.
I think too often the homeowners are being overlooked or ignored. They say we must cater the businessman because he pays so much taxes. Well, where does he get the taxes? He gets it from us.
Us equals the homeowners who have combined in most of the new cities to fight the special interests, and they are sometimes just as self-seeking as the groups they fight. In San Jose, there are now 20 or more such homeowners associations. One of the organizers is Fred Nelson.
Most homeowner organizations came into being because these people arrived in this city all at the same time, and they saw their problems as they developed immediately. Such problems as street cleaning, school crossings, any number of things. There are a myriad problems that they were concerned with in the beginning. And then a number of the organizations on the west side realized that individually, when they were discussing their problems with the city hall organization, that they had very little influence. And it was felt that if the associations were to gather into a federation, that they would represent a considerable voting bloc, and this would command more attention shall we say. And subsequently it has proven true.
I mean, politics is power, and no one's going to encourage people to come and share or contest for that power. Oh, sure, you use all of the, or that is, people will use all of the cliches of participation, get out and vote and so forth. But basically, that's all they want you to do. They want you to vote. They don't want you to contest or seek a share of the decision-making power.
At this session, after the homeowners and businessmen have been heard, only one person, and possibly not a particularly representative one, remains to voice an opinion on fluoridation of the city's water.
Mrs. Fowler, you will have to speak on the subject of...
Now, wait a minute. I'm getting to that, and you listen to me, Dr. Pace.
On fluoridation.
You're not going to shove fluoridization down our throats. What right has a politician got to tamper with our drinking water? I'll drink it from the ground with worms, bugs, and everything in it, but I'll boil it. But if you boil fluoride water, the water evaporates, the fluoride stays in. It's pure poison. Now, I don't want the water tampered with, and we're going to fight to the last ditch. And don't tamper with it. Now, remember this. We're not going to fool, and there will be a recall. And I don't mean maybe.
Most citizens are content to let their affairs be managed or mismanaged at a distance. Only the unusual individual takes a personal part in the process. The result? San Jose, like most other American cities, is a victim of the great urban expansion taking place today. Local and state budgets are inadequate to handle the myriad problems that have been thrust on urban complexes. Problems of overcrowded schools, of vast welfare needs, of creeping blight, of unemployment and crime, of unplanned destructive expansion seem insurmountable. Citizens and officials seem overwhelmed by social, economic, and political forces they are unable to control. The province towns of America should be more manageable. Here continuity is maintained. Most of the citizens know each other. There is one town meeting a year, and while attendance is encouraging, the only issue that the townspeople grappled with last year was whether or not to raise the salary of the city manager, an outsider brought in to handle the community's affairs.
Town manager's salary, appropriations under general government, item 3, personal services. What is your pleasure? Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Moderator and members of the town meeting, I'm speaking more now for the man who succeeds me more than for myself. Now, I just would like to cite, I've listed here, a few of the things that maybe some people don't appreciate, that I had to stick my chin out against odds, against abuse, against attack. And you don't know, nobody ever will know, the punishment that a manager has to take. In order to break the stopgaps that prevent progress, in order to break the stopgaps that make it better for you to live in your community, a manager at all times is there sticking his chin out, making enemies in every direction in order to help the general good.
Mr. Melchman. All right. Mr. White.
When I give a word, my word is my form, regardless of what he says. If you people will notice here on this floor, it's not in regards to the man's salary, it's personal feelings, and that I can prove. Please give him the $2,000. It doesn't make any difference to me because I am resigning tomorrow.
Provincetown has many problems that go deeper than squabbles over salary and personnel. The basic conflict is between its burgeoning summer tourist trade and its desire to hold on in some way to its old character and yet survive economically by retaining its fishing industry. This issue affects most of the people in Provincetown, but few believe that they can do much about resolving this conflict, nor do they have faith in the town meeting as the place to deal with it.
But I want to make it clear that they've never been encouraged. Now, how do you encourage people I don't know? You can't have an annual drive to say, come on in, the water's fine. By and large, it's dull and boring to them until they begin to see what the community is doing of a political sort and why it's important for them to be in there. Not only do political decisions affect them in narrow, specific economic ways, the failure of this community and other communities and the society as well to make decisions about education, employment, the general nature of our community as to its looks and where we live and where we work and how we carry this out, this is going to affect them. But as it now stands, it's a ritual which is only open to a few who are members of the in-group. Now, it's hard to get into the in-group, not because people push you out, but because there's no information on how you get in. Occasionally you're recruited, occasionally you stumble in. But we don't have a tradition that's recruiting people. The unions, they occasionally have political activity things. So do the business groups. And they say that businessmen should participate. But a lot of this is tokenism. It's a ritual which tries to reaffirm the fact that we do have participation when in effect we don't. We need more dissent. We need more political ferment. By that I don't mean riots or anything of this sort, but I mean the so-called free marketplace of ideas. And participation is the only way in which we're going to get a conflict of views and values so that we can move forward. Because right now we're at best on dead center with no real drive or no spirit or no commitment or no concern.
The commitment to our communities is as scarce as it is necessary in present-day America. The question is, why? One answer is the complexity of the country, as well as the citizenry. We have, of necessity, become so centralized a nation that few economic solutions are possible for a community without some state or federal help and the assistance of technical experts. The other answer lies with the people themselves. In Provincetown, in San Jose, and in nearly every other community, the people are caught up in their own affairs, their own pleasures, their own private troubles. Involvement in government usually is left to those who have some economic gain to be made by that involvement. And those who do care so often speak only to themselves, finding solace in quoting, "Why, Buck City Hall." It is over 300 years since the Pilgrims formed our first communities. In that time, we have made great advances in technology, in education, in mass communications. We have become a more informed citizenry, with more leisure time and more opportunity to choose where and how we want to live our lives. Unfortunately, little of that know-how, or time, or freedom of choice is being devoted to making our communities better places in which to conduct that better life.